The morning sun cast long shadows across the Lunar Research Station as Dr. Lisa Rodriguez checked her instruments for the third time. Something was wrong with the deep space sensors, but she could not figure out what. The readings showed massive objects moving toward their solar system, but that was impossible. Nothing that large existed in space except for planets and stars. Commander Jake Morrison received the alert on his personal device while drinking coffee in his office at the Earth Defense Force headquarters. He had been expecting routine patrol reports, not emergency signals from the moon. Lisa's voice crackled through the communication system with unusual tension. She never got nervous about anything, which made her current state all the more concerning. "Jake, you need to see these readings immediately," Lisa said through the static. "I have been monitoring unusual movement for the past 6 hours. Whatever is out there is massive and moving in our direction." Jake set down his coffee and activated the secure connection to the Lunar Research Station. The data that appeared on his screen made no sense. According to the sensors, over 10,000 objects were approaching from beyond Neptune's orbit. Each object was roughly the size of a city, moving in perfect formation toward Earth. Admiral Peter Kane was in the middle of reviewing fleet deployment schedules when his assistant burst into his office without knocking. The young man's face was pale, and his hands shook as he handed over a sealed data packet. Kane had been running Earth's space fleet for 15 years, and he had never seen his staff this frightened. "Sir, this came directly from Commander Morrison." The assistant stammered, "Priority Alpha classification. He says you need to read it now." Kane opened the packet and felt his blood run cold. The invasion force approaching Earth was larger than anything in human military history. If the sensors were correct, humanity was about to face an enemy with overwhelming numerical superiority. But something about the data seemed familiar, as if he had seen similar readings in classified files from decades past, across the galaxy. In a space station hidden between dimensions, Council Elder Vorth felt an ancient fear stirring in his consciousness. The ethereal being had lived for over 50,000 years, and very few things could disturb his eternal calm. But the emergency alert flashing on his personal monitor brought back memories he had tried to forget. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with routine activity as representatives from 847 different species conducted their daily business. Trade, disputes, territorial negotiations, and cultural exchanges filled the agenda. None of them paid attention to the small notification that appeared on their screens about a minor invasion in a remote sector of the galaxy. "Hi." Counselor Rim barely glanced at the report about the Krillian Empire launching another conquest campaign. The Krillians had been conquering primitive worlds for centuries, and their latest target was some isolated planet called Earth. The human species living there had not even achieved faster-than-light travel, making them an easy target for Krillian expansion, but Elder Vorth's reaction was completely different. The ancient being's energy field flickered with distress as he read the invasion report. His fellow council members had no idea why he suddenly left the chamber without explanation. They could not understand why a routine conquest would affect one of the oldest and wisest beings in the galaxy. Back on Earth, Commander Morrison gathered his senior staff in the war room deep beneath the Defense Force headquarters. The room had been built during the early days of space exploration, designed to coordinate humanity's response to any external threat. Nobody had expected to actually use it for its intended purpose. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing an unprecedented situation," Morrison began, his voice steady despite the gravity of their circumstances. "An alien fleet of unknown origin is approaching our solar system with apparent hostile intent. We have approximately 72 hours before they reach Earth orbit." General Frank Torres, a veteran of numerous military campaigns, studied the tactical display with professional interest. The enemy formation showed sophisticated planning and overwhelming force. Any conventional military response would result in complete defeat within hours of engagement. "Do we have any intelligence about their capabilities or intentions?" Torres asked, though he suspected the answer would not be encouraging. Dr. Amy Chun, the xenobiology expert, spoke up from her position at the analysis station. Based on their ship configurations and approach patterns, they appear to follow standard conquest protocols. They expect us to surrender immediately upon seeing their superior numbers. Morrison nodded grimly. That assumption might be there. First mistake. Admiral Kane, what is the status of our defensive capabilities? Kane consulted his tablet before responding. All orbital platforms are operational and ready for deployment. The hidden facilities across the solar system have been activated according to Protocol 7. Our ships are prepared to launch on your command. The mention of Protocol 7 caused several staff members to exchange meaningful glances. Most people believed Earth's space defenses consisted of a few dozen patrol ships and some basic orbital weapons. The reality was considerably different. But that information was restricted to the highest levels of government and military leadership. Lisa's voice interrupted their planning session as she provided an updated report from the Lunar Research Station. The alien fleet has changed course slightly and increased speed. They will arrive in approximately 68 hours. I am also detecting communication signals being broadcast toward Earth, but they are encrypted using unknown technology. Dr. June immediately began working on decoding the alien transmissions. Her computer systems, far more advanced than they appeared to outside observers, quickly broke through the encryption barriers. The message that appeared on her screen was exactly what they had expected. It is a surrender demand, she announced. To the room. They are calling themselves the Krillian Empire and ordering us to prepare for immediate occupation. They promise to spare civilian populations if we comply without resistance. Morrison felt a cold smile form on his lips. The aliens had made the same mistake that so many others had made throughout human history. They looked at Earth and saw only a primitive world with limited defenses. They had no idea what they were really dealing with. Send a response on all frequencies, Morrison ordered. Tell them they picked the wrong planet on the wrong day. Earth does not surrender to anyone. As the communications specialist transmitted Morrison's defiant message, hidden installations across the solar system began their final preparations. Weapons that had been concealed for decades emerged from asteroid hiding places and moon-based facilities. Ships that appeared to be simple cargo vessels revealed their true military nature. The Krillian invasion fleet continued its approach, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Commander Zixthara reviewed the intelligence reports about Earth one final time. The planet showed no signs of advanced military technology or space-based defenses. This would be another easy conquest to add to the Krillian Empire's expanding territory. Elder Vorth watched the approaching confrontation with growing dread. He alone remembered what humanity had been capable of before their voluntary isolation. The quarantine had been established not to protect Earth from the galaxy, but to protect the galaxy from Earth. Now that isolation was about to end, and he feared the consequences would reshape the cosmic order forever. Captain Steve Williams felt his heart racing as he climbed into the cockpit of his interceptor ship. The vessel looked like nothing special from the outside, resembling the cargo haulers that moved between Earth and the outer colonies. But Steve knew better than anyone what his ship could really do when the time came for action. The Krillian fleet had entered the outer edge of the solar system 3 hours ago, and their broadcasts filled every communication channel with demands for surrender. Commander Zixthara's voice echoed across space, promising swift conquest and minimal casualties if humanity submitted immediately to Krillian authority. Dr. Amy Chun stood in her laboratory, studying the alien technology fragments that had been secretly collected over the past decades. Her analysis equipment, disguised as simple research tools, revealed information that would have shocked the approaching invaders. The Krillian ships used energy systems that Earth had abandoned as obsolete over a century ago. This is fascinating, Amy muttered to herself as she examined a piece of Krillian armor plating. Their metallurgy is at least 300 years behind our current standards. How did they manage to build an empire with such primitive technology? General Frank Torres coordinated the defense from his command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The tactical displays around him showed the true extent of Earth's defensive capabilities. information that would have surprised even most government officials. Hidden bases throughout the solar system reported ready status as the moment of truth approached. Observer Nethkal watched the developing situation from his cloaked ship at the edge of the solar system. The Council spy had been monitoring Earth for decades, filing routine reports about human technological development. But something felt different about this invasion. Though he could not identify exactly what was causing his unease, the Krillian fleet spread into attack formation as they approached Jupiter's orbit. Commander Zixthara reviewed his battle plans one final time, confident that the primitive humans would surrender once they saw the overwhelming force arrayed against them. His intelligence reports indicated that Earth possessed only basic space travel capabilities and minimal defensive weapons. Captain Williams received his launch authorization and powered up his ship's true systems for the first time in months. The energy readings that appeared on his displays would have been impossible according to known galactic science. His interceptor could manipulate space and time in ways that most civilizations considered purely theoretical. "All squadrons, this is Eagle Leader," Steve transmitted to his fellow pilots. "Remember, we are not just defending Earth today. We are showing the galaxy what humanity can do when pushed too far. Let us make this a lesson they will never forget." Dr. Chun finished her analysis and transmitted her findings to the command center. The Krillian weapons operated on principles that Earth had mastered centuries ago, while their shields used technology that human scientists had discarded as inefficient decades in the past. The invaders were bringing primitive tools to fight. An advanced civilization, Klax, the Krillian ground forces commander, prepared his troops for planetary assault. His soldiers carried weapons designed to overwhelm primitive defenses and subdue populations that had never seen advanced military technology. The idea that these humans might actually fight back never occurred to him as a serious possibility. The first engagement began when Steve's squadron emerged from hiding behind Jupiter's largest moon. The Krillian sensors detected 12 small ships approaching their massive battle group of 500 vessels. Commander Zixthara actually laughed when he saw the sensor readings, amazed that the humans would attempt such a hopeless attack. "All ships, target those primitive vessels and destroy them quickly," Zixthara ordered his fleet. "Let us show these humans the price of resistance before we proceed to their homeworld." The Krillian ships opened fire with their most powerful weapons, energy beams that had destroyed countless worlds throughout their empire's expansion. The beams struck Steve's squadron with enough force to vaporize entire cities, and for a moment Zixthara thought the engagement was over before it had truly begun. But Steve's ships did not explode or disappear as expected. Instead, the human vessels seemed to absorb the energy attacks and convert them into power for their own systems. The interceptors began moving in patterns that defied everything the Krillians understood about space combat and physics. "Impossible," Zixthara whispered as he watched the human ships phase through his fleet's defensive formations like they were made of empty space. No primitive civilization could possess such technology. Steve's squadron struck back with weapons that the Krillians had never seen before. The human ships fired concentrated bursts of energy that seemed to ignore the laws of physics, passing through Krillian shields and armor as if they did not exist. Entire enemy vessels simply vanished when struck by the mysterious human weapons. Observer Nethkal frantically transmitted data back to the Galactic Council, but he could barely believe what his sensors were recording. The humans were not just fighting back against the Krillian invasion, they were completely destroying one of the galaxy's most feared military forces with apparent ease. General Torres watched the battle reports with satisfaction as Steve's squadron eliminated 60% of the Krillian advance guard within the first hour of combat. The enemy's superior numbers meant nothing when their technology was so far behind human capabilities. This was going to be a very short war. Dr. Chun analyzed the captured Krillian equipment and shook her head in amazement at how backward their technology really was. She had expected alien invaders to possess advanced science that might challenge human defenses. Instead, she was looking at weapons and armor that belonged in a museum of primitive warfare. "Commander?" Zixthara desperately tried to understand. what was happening to his fleet as more human ships appeared throughout the solar system. These vessels moved with impossible speed and agility, striking his forces from directions that should have been physically impossible. His most experienced officers were reporting equipment failures and tactical situations that made no sense. Clacks received emergency orders to abort the ground invasion as the space battle turned into a complete disaster for Krillian forces. His proud army, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, was now fleeing in panic from 12 human interceptors. The idea seemed so ridiculous that he initially refused to believe the reports. Steve's voice came through the communication channels as his squadron finished destroying the last ships in the Krillian advance force. All enemy vessels in this sector have been eliminated, moving to intercept the main fleet. Earth Defense Force continues to hold all positions. The surviving Krillian ships transmitted desperate messages back to their empire, warning that Earth was not the primitive world they had expected to find. The humans possessed technology that made Krillian weapons look like ancient relics, and their fighting capabilities far exceeded anything in the galactic databases. Observer Nethkal completed his emergency report to the Council with growing concern about what this meant for galactic stability. Humanity had just demonstrated military superiority over one of the most powerful empires in known space, and they had done it with casual efficiency that suggested this was only the beginning of their true capabilities. President Nicole Hayes stared at the briefing documents in complete shock as her advisors explained what had been happening above Earth for the past 12 hours. She had been kept in the dark about many aspects of Earth's true defensive capabilities. But the alien invasion had forced the military to reveal secrets that had been hidden for decades. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in chaos as representatives from hundreds of species tried to understand the impossible battle. Reports flooding in from the Sol system. High Counselor Rim called for order repeatedly, but the assembly remained in an uproar over news that a primitive world was defeating the mighty Krillian Empire. Colonel Danny Brooks led his Special Forces team through the wreckage of a Krillian scout ship that had crashed in the Nevada desert. The alien technology scattered across the crash site looked impressive until his engineers began examining it closely. Their portable analysis equipment revealed that the invaders were using science that Earth had surpassed generations ago. Dr. Kevin Jiang stood before a hastily assembled group of government officials and military leaders, trying to explain how humanity had developed such advanced technology while remaining isolated from galactic civilization. His presentation included information that most of the people in the room were learning for the first time. Our ancestors made a deliberate choice to pursue independent, technological development rather than relying on established galactic standards, Kevin explained to the stunned audience. While other civilizations shared common technology through the Council, we evolved our science in complete isolation. The result is that we develop solutions to problems that other species never had to solve. Kethver, Emperor of the Krillian Empire, received battle reports that made no logical sense according to everything he understood about warfare and technology. His greatest fleet was being systematically destroyed by a species that supposedly had not even achieved faster-than-light travel. The communications from his surviving commanders described weapons and tactics that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. High Counselor Rim demanded answers from Elder Vorth, but the ancient ethereal being remained silent in his private chambers. The other council members could not understand why someone who had lived through 50,000 years of galactic history would be disturbed by a simple invasion report. They had no idea that Vorth was the only being alive who remembered the real reason for Earth's quarantine. President Hayes finally learned about humanity's true place in the galaxy as her advisors explained the existence of the Galactic Council and Earth's deliberate isolation from galactic civilization. The revelation that aliens had been aware of humanity for centuries, but had chosen to keep Earth separated from the larger community, raised questions that would reshape human understanding of their place in the universe. Colonel Brooks coordinated the recovery of alien technology from multiple crash sites across Earth's surface. His teams worked quickly to secure the wreckage before civilian populations could examine the debris. The alien equipment provided valuable intelligence about Krillian capabilities, though most of it confirmed that the invaders were technologically inferior to human forces. Dr. Zhang continued his briefing by explaining how Earth's isolation had allowed humanity to develop unique approaches to energy manipulation, space travel, and weapons technology. While galactic civilizations had standardized their science through council databases, humans had been forced to solve every problem independently. This isolation had produced innovations that other species could not imagine. The Krillian Emperor struggled to comprehend reports that his invasion fleet was being defeated by weapons that his scientists claimed were theoretically impossible. Human ships appeared to manipulate time and space in ways that contradicted established galactic understanding of physics. The idea that a primitive world could possess such advanced science challenged everything he believed about the natural order of the galaxy. Observer Nethkal transmitted increasingly desperate reports to the Council as he witnessed humanity's true capabilities firsthand. The human ships moved through space using principles that defied galactic scientific understanding, while their weapons seemed to rewrite the laws of physics with each attack. The spy realized that his decades of monitoring Earth had completely failed to detect the planet's real technological level. President Hayes met with her top military advisors to discuss humanity's response to learning about galactic civilization. The knowledge that Earth had been deliberately isolated raised serious questions about the Council's intentions and whether humanity could trust any alien government that had kept such important secrets for so long. Colonel Brooks analyzed the recovered Krillian equipment and reported his findings to the command center. The alien weapons used energy systems that human science had abandoned as inefficient over 2 centuries ago, while their armor relied on materials that Earth had replaced with superior alternatives decades in the past. The invaders had brought primitive tools to fight an advanced civilization. Dr. Zhang explained to the assembled officials how humanity's independent development had produced technology that operated on completely different principles from standard galactic science. Human ships used dimensional manipulation instead of conventional propulsion, while human weapons affected matter at the quantum level rather than relying on simple energy projection. The emergency Council session continued as member species demanded explanations for the impossible battle reports from Earth. Representatives who had dismissed humanity as primitive savages now faced evidence that humans possessed technology superior to the most advanced galactic civilizations. The political implications of this revelation threatened to destabilize the entire galactic order. Kethver ordered his surviving fleet commanders to retreat from the Sol system and regroup for a defensive strategy. The Emperor, who had conquered hundreds of worlds, now faced the humiliating prospect of defeat by a species that the galaxy had considered beneath notice. His military advisors struggled to develop tactics against an enemy whose capabilities exceeded their understanding. Elder Vorth finally emerged from his private chambers and requested an immediate audience with the full council. The ancient being's energy field flickered with emotions that his fellow council members had never seen before. His presence commanded instant attention from representatives who normally spent their time arguing about trade, regulations, and territorial disputes. President Hayes authorized the formation of a first contact diplomatic team to establish formal communication with the Galactic Council. The revelation that humanity had been excluded from galactic civilization required careful negotiation to ensure that Earth's interests were protected in any future relationships with alien governments. Colonel Brooks supervised the establishment of secure facilities to study the captured Krillian technology and prepare for potential future alien contact. His teams worked to understand enemy capabilities while maintaining operational security about human technological advantages that had proven so decisive in the current conflict. The battle reports continued to arrive at the council chamber as human forces expanded their operations beyond Earth's immediate vicinity. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was now pursuing the retreating Krillian fleet with weapons and ships that redefined what the galaxy considered possible. In terms of military technology and strategic capability, Admiral Lisa Park stood on the bridge of her flagship as the human fleet prepared to launch its first offensive operation beyond the solar system. The retreating Krillian forces had regrouped near Alpha Centauri, apparently believing that distance would provide them with some advantage against Earth's impossible technology. They were about to learn how wrong that assumption really was. Lieutenant Tony Martinez reviewed his tactical displays one final time before leading his squadron into what would become the most famous space battle in galactic history. The young pilot had developed new combat formations during the defense of Earth, and his innovations were about to be tested against the largest Krillian battle group ever assembled. Professor Rachel Kim worked frantically to decode the vast databases recovered from captured Krillian ships. The information contained within these alien computers revealed the true scope of galactic civilization and Earth's place within it. What she discovered would fundamentally change humanity's understanding of their own history and destiny. Survival. Officer Grix commanded the last functional Krillian battle station, a massive fortress that had never been defeated in 5 centuries of Imperial expansion. His orders were simple: hold the line against human forces and buy time for the Empire to develop new weapons capable of fighting Earth's advanced technology. But Grix suspected that no amount of time would be sufficient. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in panic as representatives received updates about the expanding human offensive. Species that had considered themselves among the galaxy's most advanced civilizations now faced the terrifying possibility that they were primitives compared to the isolated humans of Earth. Admiral Park's fleet emerged from dimensional space directly inside the Krillian defensive perimeter, bypassing their sensor networks and defensive positions with casual ease. The human ships appeared as if from nowhere, their arrival violating every principle of galactic military science and strategic planning. Lieutenant Martinez led his squadron in a series of maneuvers that defied the basic laws of physics as understood by galactic civilization. His fighters moved through solid matter, traveled backward through time to avoid enemy fire, and struck targets from directions that should have been impossible to access. Professor Kim discovered that the Krillian databases contained references to an ancient species called the predecessors, who had once ruled the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing millions of years ago. The description of predecessor technology matched many of the capabilities that human forces were demonstrating against the current invasion. Survival. Officer Grix watched in horror as human ships simply phased through his fortress's shields and armor as if they were made of empty space. The weapons that had defended the Krillian Empire for centuries proved completely useless against enemies who could ignore the fundamental principles of matter and energy. Ambassador Quenter departed from the council chambers with emergency authorization to attempt first contact with humanity. The diplomatic mission carried instructions to offer any concessions necessary to prevent Earth from continuing its devastating campaign against galactic civilization. The Council finally understood that they were dealing with a species that could destroy them all. Admiral Park coordinated her fleet's assault with the precision of a master strategist, but her tactics seemed almost supernatural to the defending Krillians. Human ships predicted enemy movements before they happened, struck targets that were supposedly protected by impossible barriers, and maintained perfect coordination across impossible distances. Lieutenant Martinez became a legend throughout the galaxy as recordings of his combat techniques spread through fleeing Krillian ships. His ability to outmaneuver entire fleets while piloting a single fighter craft challenged everything that galactic military academies taught about space combat and tactical planning. Professor Kim uncovered evidence that Earth itself had once been the capital world of the ancient predecessor civilization. The quarantine established by the Galactic Council was not meant to protect humanity from galactic civilization, but to protect the galaxy from humanity's inevitable rediscovery of their true heritage and capabilities. Survival Officer Grix sent his final transmission to Emperor Kethver as human forces completed their systematic destruction of the Krillian defensive line. His message was simple and terrifying. Humanity possessed technology that made the entire Krillian Empire look like children playing with primitive toys. The Council emergency session devolved into chaos. as member species began demanding immediate defensive preparations against the human threat. Representatives who had spent centuries debating trade regulations now faced the prospect of their civilizations being swept away by a species they had dismissed as harmless primitives. Admiral Park's forces did not simply defeat the Krillian battle groups, they completely dismantled them with weapons that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics with each shot. Enemy ships did not explode when struck by human weapons, they simply ceased to exist as if they had never been built in the first place. Lieutenant Martinez's tactical innovations spread throughout the human fleet as other pilots adapted his techniques to their own combat situations. The young officer's ability to treat three-dimensional space as if it had unlimited dimensions revolutionized human military doctrine and terrified galactic observers. Professor Kim transmitted her discoveries to Earth's leadership, revealing that humanity was not just another species that had developed advanced technology through isolation. They were the descendants of the galaxy's former rulers, slowly awakening to their true nature after millions of years of dormancy. Survival. Officer Grix evacuated his remaining personnel as the last Krillian stronghold fell to human forces. The fortress that had anchored Imperial power for centuries was reduced to cosmic dust in minutes by weapons that operated on principles the galaxy had forgotten long ago. Ambassador Quenter's diplomatic ship approached the edge of human space with a mixture of hope and terror. The Council's most experienced negotiator carried offers of alliance, tribute, and submission, knowing that humanity now held the power to reshape galactic civilization according to their own desires. Admiral Park received reports that Krillian resistance had collapsed across all sectors as their remaining forces fled toward the galactic core. The empire that had terrorized hundreds of worlds for centuries was now in complete retreat from a human fleet that had been operational for less than a week. Lieutenant Martinez led the pursuit of fleeing Krillian ships, his squadron demonstrating capabilities that would be studied by galactic military historians for generations to come. The young pilot's casual mastery of impossible physics represented humanity's emergence as the galaxy's new dominant force, the final Krillian. Transmission reached Emperor Kethver as his empire crumbled around him. The message from Survival Officer Grix contained a warning that would echo throughout galactic history. Humanity was not conquering the Krillian Empire. They were simply reclaiming territory that had always belonged to them. Fleet Admiral Ben Cooper surveyed the remains of the Krillian Empire from his command ship as human forces completed their systematic liberation of former Imperial territories. What had begun as an invasion of Earth 3 months ago had become the fastest military campaign in galactic history, with humanity dismantling a 500-year-old empire in less time than most species needed to plan a single battle. Dr. Samantha Lee prepared for humanity's first official diplomatic contact with the Galactic Council aboard the newly constructed embassy ship. Her mission was unprecedented in galactic history, to negotiate the terms under which an awakened predecessor species would rejoin the civilization they had once created and then abandoned millions of years ago. Captain Ryan Johnson led the exploration. Fleets that were mapping former Krillian space and establishing contact with the liberated worlds. Everywhere his ships traveled, they encountered species that had lived under Imperial oppression for generations, and these beings viewed humanity as miraculous saviors rather than conquerors. Emperor Kethver sat in exile on a remote world at the edge of galactic civilization, his once mighty empire reduced to scattered refugee populations fleeing human expansion. The former ruler, who had commanded the loyalty of billions, now survived only because humanity had chosen to show mercy rather than pursue total extermination. Council Elder Vorth finally agreed to reveal the truth about Earth's quarantine to the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. The ancient ethereal being's confession would explain why the Council had hidden humanity's existence and why their emergence represented the most significant event in galactic history since the original predecessor departure. Fleet Admiral Cooper established humanity's first permanent base outside the solar system on a world that had once served as a major Krillian military installation. The transformation from Imperial Fortress to human colony took only days, with Earth's advanced technology converting the facility to serve completely different purposes. Dr. Lee arrived at the Council Station with a simple message that would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity offered peace, cooperation, and technological advancement to any species willing to accept Earth as an equal partner in galactic affairs, but they would never again accept isolation or control from any external authority. Captain Johnson's exploration teams discovered that many former Krillian slave worlds possessed ancient ruins that matched archaeological sites found on Earth. The evidence suggested that the predecessor civilization had once spanned the entire galaxy, with Earth serving as their capital world before their mysterious withdrawal from galactic affairs. Elder Vorth began his testimony before the full Council Assembly, revealing information that had been classified for millions of years. The quarantine of Earth had not been established to protect humanity from galactic civilization, but to protect the galaxy from humanity's inevitable rediscovery of their true nature as the heirs of the predecessors. The liberated worlds welcomed human exploration teams with celebrations that had not been seen since before the rise of the Krillian Empire. Species that had lived under oppression for centuries viewed humanity's arrival as the fulfillment of ancient prophecies about the return of the great teachers who had once guided galactic development. Fleet Admiral Cooper coordinated the establishment of trade relationships with dozens of former Krillian territories, sharing human technology freely in exchange for cultural knowledge and diplomatic cooperation. This generous approach to interspecies relations stood in stark contrast to the imperial model that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. Dr. Lee presented humanity's diplomatic proposal to the Council with calm confidence, knowing that Earth held all the advantages in any negotiation. Her offer was simple. The galaxy could either accept humanity as partners in a new era of cooperation and advancement, or face the consequences of opposing the species that had created galactic civilization in the first place. Captain Johnson reported that human exploration fleets had encountered no significant military resistance anywhere in former Krillian space. The speed and completeness of the Empire's collapse had shocked even human military planners, who had expected at least some organized resistance to their expansion. Elder Vorth revealed that the predecessors had withdrawn from galactic civilization, not because of defeat or destruction, but because they had grown weary of ruling over species that seemed incapable of advancing beyond certain technological and social limitations. They had retreated to Earth to pursue their own development while allowing the galaxy to find its own path. The Council representatives listened in stunned silence as Elder Vorth explained that the quarantine had been designed to last until humanity either destroyed themselves or evolved beyond their ancestors' capabilities. The invasion by the Krillian Empire had triggered protocols that revealed Earth's true nature to the galaxy, whether the Council was ready for that revelation or not. Fleet Admiral Cooper received reports that human influence was spreading throughout the galaxy faster than anyone had anticipated. Former Imperial worlds were requesting human assistance with everything from technological development to social reform, viewing Earth as the source of solutions to problems they had struggled with for generations. Dr. Lee concluded her presentation to the Council with a demonstration of human technological capabilities that left the assembled representatives speechless. Her ship's systems casually manipulated space and time to create impossible visual effects while explaining that this was only the most basic level of what humanity could accomplish. Captain Johnson established permanent human embassies on 12 different worlds within the first month of contact, creating a network of diplomatic relationships that would form the foundation of a new galactic order. The speed with which former enemies became allies amazed even experienced human diplomats. Emperor Kethver provided his final testimony to the Council about humanity's military capabilities, describing weapons and tactics that had made his empire's conquest of the galaxy look like a children's game. His warnings about human power were no longer necessary, but they served as a reminder of what happened to those who threatened Earth. Elder Vorth completed his revelation by explaining that the predecessors had always intended to return when The galaxy was ready for their guidance, but they had expected this return to take millions more years. The premature awakening caused by the Krillian invasion meant that humanity would need to take responsibility for galactic civilization much sooner than anyone had planned. The Council voted unanimously to accept humanity's proposal for partnership, rather than risk the alternative of opposition to Earth's expanding influence. The decision marked the end of the old galactic order and the beginning of a new era in which humanity would guide the development of species. Across countless worlds, Fleet Admiral Cooper transmitted Earth's response to the Council's acceptance. Across all galactic communication networks, the message was simple and would be remembered throughout history. The galaxy has been living in our shadow for too long, and now it is time for all of us to step into the light together.